Father Fortill is one of the most important side characters in the Dresden Files. And if you haven't read the Warrior short story, then you probably don't understand all the things that he's done for our heroes over the past 17 or so books. This video is coming out between Battleground and Mirror Mirror, so spoiler warning for literally everything that's happened so far. And after spending way too much time researching this video, I'm going to tell you everything that you ever wanted to know about Father Fortill. And the Dresden Files short story, The Warrior. We all know that Father Fortill is a priest at St. Mary of the Angels in Chicago. He's often one of the people that's supporting Michael and the other Knights of the Cross, doing everything from sheltering the vanilla mortals that are in danger from all the things that Dresden and Michael are fighting, to babysitting the carpenter children so that Michael and Charity can go out on a date. I mean, go save the world. He also helps get the denarian coins out of circulation when the knights are able to separate them from their holders, though lots of the coins still end up going missing and getting back into the wrong hands after a while. We'll talk about that. Forthill is a very average man who trained as a lawyer earlier in his life. His work in the church brings him into supernatural circles that aren't directly related to Dresden's social network, but they still kind of run in the same circles. Father Fortill has contacts in the church in Red Court territory in Latin America, and he's also a member of the Ordo Malas. This is the order that the Inquisition sprung out of in the Dresden verse, because nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. When I googled the order, the only thing that I could find was Warhammer 40k references, so if you understand that part of history a little bit better than I do, then share your knowledge in the comments. One thing that I don't think is explained enough in the book is Father Fortill's tattoo. Father Fortill has the Eye of Tot tattooed on his arm, which he got with Father Vincent and other priests that were ordained around the same time. The Eye of Tot that Forthill has on his arm is probably more accurately called the Eye of Horus. In Egyptian mythology, the god Set took one or both of Horus's eyes, and the eyes were later returned to Horus and healed by Tot, the god of knowledge, science, and judgment. Horus later gave it to his father, Osiris, to help him thrive in the afterlife. It's the left eye, and it usually symbolizes some sort of protection. A big part of Father Fortill's backstory moment comes to us in the story The Warrior. This novelette originally appeared in the 2009 anthology Mean Streets. God, I'm old. It takes place between Small Favor and the short story Last Call. If you want a video on Last Call, tell me in the comments. Jim Butcher said in the foreword to the story that big things are built from small, commonplace things. Basically, the unintended consequences are important. A lot of fans, myself included, felt really bad for Michael after Small Favor when he got hurt and had to retire from being a knight. But in this story, we see Michael doing things like coaching his daughter's softball team and running his construction business. And he seems to be pretty content with his life. If you don't want to play Pokemon with all the anthologies, you can also just read Side Jobs. It's got a lot of stuff in here. We start the story with Harry telling Michael that he's in danger. Dresden has been receiving photos of Michael that look like they came from a private investigator or someone who's following Michael around with bad intentions. Michael doesn't seem to be too concerned with it. He initially declines Harry's help and seems content to be out of the supernatural game and thinks that nothing can really hurt him. Harry follows him home anyways because he's Harry, and he ends up saving a little girl from running into traffic. Harry, like most of the readers, feels bad about what happened to Michael and seems to be really trying to protect him a lot harder than usual. He hides fake swords in plain sight in his car, and the creeper takes the bait, but dumps them a few blocks away. Father Fortill struggles in this story between helping Michael and keeping his secrets, because he's kind of made promises to keep secrets. But he eventually breaks after Michael's daughter Alicia is taken. Forthill reveals that he's part of the Ordo Malas, an order within the church that keeps people safe from supernatural entities like vampires and fairies that try to harm them by pretending to be gods. You know, you pretend to be some all-powerful being and then get somebody's trust and then you go do bad things to them. We can't have that. The order recruits very, very slowly, only after putting a potential new member under observation for years, because they have to make sure that that person has the best character possible and isn't going to let power go to their head. Remember the whole Inquisition thing? The Inquisition happening taught the group that power goes to your head when you think that you're in the right. People can do a lot of terrible things when they think God's on their side or wants or even requires them to do terrible things to other people. The Order almost never involves themselves directly in the conflicts. They're more like a support system for the Knights of the Cross and their allies, kind of like how the Venatori Umborum support the Venatori. For more on the Venatori Umborum, please go watch my video on the Dresden Files comic Warcry, and I will link that in the description. The man who took Alicia and was trying to bait Dresden into taking the swords out of his apartment so they'd be easier to steal is Father Rourke Douglas. Douglas is a fellow member of the Ordo Malas. He's ex-military, and has served in parishes in Guatemala, Indonesia, and Rwanda. He was also very close to Shiro and very upset when Shiro met his fate. Father Douglas was very well respected until he went rogue. Not many people in the church know about the Knights of the Cross or the swords, and Father Douglas doesn't like that they were being stored at Harry's house instead of being used for good. He sees Harry as a deceptive witch, and he thinks that Harry did something to trick Father Fortill and the knights into entrusting him with the swords. Harry basically has the blessing to do this, pun intended, from the angels, and the problem with this is that the angels only show themselves to one or two people at a time, so it's really easy to say that you have, like, the blessing of the angels to go and do something and just be lying about it. And it's also hard to validate, so it's hard for somebody else to go and be like, hey, you actually do have them on your side, or, oh, there was some supernatural entity pretending to be the angels, and that's why you think that you're in the right, but you're actually in the wrong. Now give me the swords. Father Douglas Rourke's name is very interesting to me when I looked it up. Rourke has Irish roots, and it means something like ruler or champion. And this emphasizes that his character sees himself as some sort of holy warrior or paladin. The name Douglas also has Gaelic origins, and it means something like dark river or dark stream, so his character is quite literally a dark holy warrior. He also has an amulet that's presumed to be from his associates in the Venatorium Burum that makes Dresden's magic not work on him. So going back to the whole water meaning part of Douglas, it really is like Harry's magic has been grounded out by water when he tries to attack Father Douglas. Guatemala is also close to Chichen Itza and firmly in Red Court territory. His behavior started to change a couple years ago before the short story, which would have been around the same time as Proven Guilty or White Knight, and well before the events it changes. Father Douglas might have been infected, or at least influenced by what he saw the Red Court do, and take things more personally, while he was in Guatemala. Molly describes being infected as having something that you already are or believe in being amplified, and it's very, very subtle until it's obvious to everybody else that something's wrong or something's changed. So Father Douglas's change in character, to me, at least reads as textbook infection by nemesis, but it's still kind of up in the air. They never really definitively tell you if it's that or not. During this conversation, Forthill reveals this secret storage compartment in his room that made an appearance in Ghost Stories, so this is where Harry learns about it. Dresden and Michael are able to go and save Alicia, and Dresden ends the story by talking to Uriel, who's disguised as a janitor named Jake, because of course he is. Jim Butcher likes to use janitors as stand-in characters whenever somebody magical needs to appear to be a normal human being. And we talked about this in the last video I did for B is for Bigfoot. Uriel tells Dresden that if he hadn't given Michael his turn to go into the helicopter, then both of them would have perished on Demon Reach. So having Michael survive but be hurt enough to retire from the night stuff is a much better outcome than Harry thinks it is. And I think that this really helps Harry be able to forgive himself and stop beating himself up over what happened to Michael. Uriel also emphasizes that there's more than one kind of warrior. Some fight the bad guys like the Knights of the Cross, and some just involve themselves in other people's lives in a way that helps them. This sort of brings me back to Father Fortill and why I think that he could be considered a warrior in the story. He's mostly in the story to give Dresden and Michael intel on Father Douglas, but he also gives us a better idea on how the Knights of the Cross work in the church, and what their support network looks like behind the scenes. Or more what the other kinds of warrior do. By helping one person through something, you give them the strength to do something else. Like when Dresden took out the power and made the inebriated electrician go home earlier in the story, he saved that guy from a workplace accident and let him live to give his daughter a life-saving transplant years later. Forthill is the guy that gives Harry sandwiches so that he has the energy to go save the world. But he's also the guy that takes Denarian coins and puts them into hiding so that the knights can focus on trying to save the Denarians, or at least minimizing the damage that the Denarians cause. He also protects the people Dresden and Michael bring to him when they get in over their heads with the supernatural stuff, like Lydia or Fitz. These unintended outcomes make a big difference. Now, you'll remember from Ghost Story that Father Fortill can sense Harry's spirit when he's in ghost mode. And Father Fortill got captured by Aristides, who was the bad guy who was making the kids do bad stuff in that book. And Father Fortill almost didn't make it. There was a literal angel of death standing over him, still not able to interfere because Father Fortill has free will and has to live with the consequences of that. But the angel of death was there to take his soul to heaven so that nobody on the bad side could take him to hell or do anything with his spirit. Which to me says that Father Forthill was a righteous dude. We know that the angels don't do this for everyone, but we also see them personally guarding the Carpenter house after Michael was forced into retirement. Father Forthill having a literal guardian angel to protect him when his spirit is super vulnerable shows just how faithfully he's served their boss and drawn attention from the fallen. So he's put himself in danger by doing this. He's the kind of good man that Michael is, and because of that, he's been targeted by the Denarians and others on the fallen side. Now that we have some background on Father Forthill, let's talk about some theories that have surrounded him in the past. I think most of these have been pretty much put to rest, but I still think they're fun, and I spent way too long looking at them, so we're going to talk. In Ghost Story, Father Fortill has a well-worn copy of the King James Version of the Bible in his room. Jim Butcher grew up in a very religious household, famously saying that they put the fun in fundamental. So I don't think that he would have specifically name-dropped a Protestant version of the Bible by accident. A lot of people on the internet think that this means that Forthill was going to betray them or that he wasn't a true Catholic or whatever, and that there was something shady going on. But I strongly disagree, and so did a lot of other people, which was nice to see. The book might have belonged to Shiro, who was a Baptist, and I'm not an expert in religion, but I know that some Baptists prefer the King James Version of the Bible over other versions. Shiro could have also gotten it at the tent revival that he was baptized at or soon afterwards and just kept it, and it was just like a keepsake for him. And since he met his fate in Chicago, it makes sense that Father Fortill would have it. I've also met a lot of ministers and other people of faith who like to study multiple versions of the Bible. So Father Fortill might have this particular version of the Bible as one of many that he has and just reads on a scholarly basis. There might be one translation that makes something more understandable to him in his work as a religious leader or a general helper of the Knights of the Cross. Also, a well-worn copy of a 500-year-old holy book probably has a lot of faith power in it from the people who spent a lot of time reading it and studying it, so it could be a magic-ish item that comes into play during Hell's Bells. This would be an even bigger moment if the book is Shiro's and Dresden uses it to take down Nicodemus once and for all and avenging Shiro's sacrifice and death masks. Remember, if the fake Shroud of Turin could have some sort of magical powers, I think this can too. Another theory that people had is that Father Fortill is a secret Denarian or traitor because the coins keep finding a way back into circulation. And that's a big problem. Personally, I think that theory has 0% chance of being true. The obvious counter-argument is that if an angel was ready to take Forthill to heaven and protect his spirit from the fallen, then it's probably not going to block the fallen from collecting their buddy if he is betraying them. I can't think of a way that going to heaven instead of hell is a punishment or a detour. Also, Michael knew that Harry had Lashiel, even though he didn't accept her offer to take up her coin and was actively trying to get rid of her. If Forthill had taken up a coin, then Michael would have tried to save him a long time ago. So when the Knights of the Cross find a coin that needs to go bye-bye, the coins get hidden by either going into some secret archive that may or may not be compromised, or they get sent random places in the middle of nowhere, and secrecy and just nobody knowing where they are keeps them hidden. There's probably several people involved in transporting these coins that can be tempted to take them up for however long it takes for the fallen angel to come back into play. You might also have the coin pull some shenanigans to make it end up with someone who has no idea what it is. Like if you see a quarter on the ground and pick it up because it's there. You know, normal Denarian stuff. Plus, Anduriel, who's Nicodemus's fallen friend, can basically spy on anything seen or said near a living thing's shadow, so he's gonna find his frenemies eventually. Remember, not all Denarians work together. Also, it would be super awkward to live in a church while being the host of a fallen angel. Like, super awkward. I'm pretty sure you'd just burst into fire at that point. Father Forthill could also be the connection that brings one of the minor characters that he's helped in the past back for the big apocalyptic trilogy. It's way too early to talk about what the apocalyptic trilogy is going to have in it, and I spent way too much time trying to find something that wasn't just a crapshoot on this. But I could totally see someone like Fitz or Lydia coming back into the story at some point, or someone that was associated with them, and Father Forthill being sort of that connection that brings them back into the game. I always knew that there was more to Father Forthill than meets the eye, and it's nice to see in The Warrior exactly what his role is. He might get more into the game as the series goes on. We still have like 5 books or so before the big apocalyptic trilogy, and there's still room for a lot of stuff to happen, so I'm going to stay tuned. And if you have any comments about Father Forthill or any of the other Dresden stuff that we talk about, leave me a comment down below. I'll see y'all later. Bye.